Oh, there we go. Good morning. Welcome to House Human Services. Today's Friday, January 16th, and we are going to continue our conversation about H94 or H594, an act relating to establishing the temporary emergency housing and accountability program and the return home program. And we have witnesses from the Vermont Interfaith Action and the Christ Episcopal Church, Montpelier, and Melissa in Beth Ann. I don't know who's going to go first. Melissa, you're going first.
It's up to Beth Ann.
She pointed at you, so she has determined you're going first.
So I am going first today.
And you both have been in our committee before, so I'm going to forego introductions and then give the floor to Melissa. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Representative Ray and members of the House Committee on Human Services. My name is Melissa Batta. I am the Executive Director of Vermont Interfaith Action. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. VIA serves as the administrator of Vermont's Extreme Cold Weather Shelter Program. I want to walk you through the process of how extreme weather provisions are assessed, activated, and implemented, and to share what we have learned from administrating this program during increasingly volatile winter conditions. At its core, the Extreme Cold Weather Shelter Program exists to prevent loss of life for our unhoused neighbors. Our guiding principle is simple. No one should be left outside when weather conditions pose a serious and foreseeable risk to human safety. The work is logistical, relational, and time-sensitive and depends on coordination across state agencies, local partners, congregations, and shelter providers. Our process begins with continuous monitoring of weather conditions. We track National Weather Service forecasts daily with particular attention to temperature, wind chill, precipitation, and duration of exposure risk. The extreme cold events are rarely just about a single overnight low, but extended periods of sub-freezing temperatures, ice, snow accumulation, and wind all compound danger, especially for people already living outdoors or are in unstable conditions. When forecasts approach sustained temperatures of 0 degrees Fahrenheit, including wind chill for optional activation, and negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit, including wind chill for mandatory implementation, VIA initiates an internal review. And this includes checking in directly with the shelter provider sites to confirm their readiness to operate, including staffing, supplies, and any logistical needs, so we can ensure each site is prepared to safely receive guests. Once conditions indicate a need for activation, the shelter program staff begins sending out activation warnings to shelter sites, DCF staff, state workers, and the 211 staff, who are the ones that will relay information to the public. Our role as administrator is to determine when extreme weather provisions should be activated and to ensure that shelters and emergency sites have the authorization, communication, and operational support they need to respond quickly. Decisions are made with urgency, but also consistency guided by established criteria rather than ad hoc judgment. When extreme weather shelter is activated, the staff provide technical assistance to shelter site locations, helping them manage bed availability, extended hours if needed, and temporary overflow options should they arise. The support sites in addressing barriers that may prevent people from accessing shelter, including transportation challenges, medical vulnerabilities, or trauma-related needs. The extreme cold weather shelter staff also maintain ongoing communication with those on the front lines, the faith communities, local organizers, offering guidance and support to ensure that shelters can respond effectively to critical incidents and rapidly changing conditions should they arise. This coordination ensures timely and safe access to shelters for those in need. While the program has prevented harm and saved lives, it operates with real constraints, and we haven't been able to save every life this particular season. Capacity remains limited, mostly due to staffing shortages, particularly during holiday times. Facilities not designed to absorb a growing scale of need that we see now, or not designed to house individuals even for a night or two. And we're seeing that extreme weather events are either more frequent, but they're also less predictable. It's stretching a system that was never intended to function for long-term housing solutions, but we're happy to fill in the needs that have arisen. This program highlights a fundamental tension that emergency sheltering is reactive by nature. It's a necessary safety net, but it's not a sustainable for stable permanent housing. And each activation underscores the urgency of addressing the broader housing and homelessness crisis in Vermont. In closing, BIA's process as administrator is built on vigilance, coordination, and rapid response. We take this responsibility seriously because the consequences of delay or inaction are severe. The extreme weather sheltering is one of the last lines of defense for people with nowhere else to go. Thank you for your attention, your continued work on policies that affect our most vulnerable neighbors, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Representative Bishop.
Thank you. A couple of questions. You went through quickly those parties that are notified should a shelter be opening. And maybe the group I'm going to ask about is included in that, but I missed it. Hospitals. Are hospitals among the groups that are notified? I asked the question because we had some representatives of hospitals speaking yesterday about the increased pressure on emergency departments. And it wasn't clear to me in the way that they provided their testimony that they were aware of this option. So I offer that as a suggestion. I think I saw your head nod that they are not currently on the list. Is that correct?
No. So the extreme cold weather shelter sites that we do have operating, we only have 6 operating across the country or across the state. And they're only in certain locations. We notify the shelter sites when they need to activate so that they know that if they activate, they're going to receive funding for it. We also notify DCF staff, and they've asked us to include a couple of other state workers who operate with within the Agency of Human Services, and then 211. In terms of any other service providers, hospitals, they're not on that list of which shelter locations are activated when, but anyone can call 211 and they have that information.
Okay, and maybe it's the next level down where the notification can take place. I'm on the email distribution list for the Chittenden County Homelessness Alliance. So I get the notifications, and I can ask that question of them, I guess, to see if UVM Medical Center is on that list. I'm curious if you're aware, or maybe our next witness can help with this question. The logistics of a person's personal property, which I imagine is more significant than what they might carry with them when they go to a shelter. Can you discuss that at all, and how that is handled? How you see it handled?
So each shelter site is different. As the administrators of the grant, we're not, we offer guidelines for how the shelter sites set up their locations, because I mean, we have some folks that are being, that the emergency shelters are in congregations. We have others that are in libraries, municipal buildings. So each location has its own unique barriers. Some of the shelter sites have used money to procure secure lockers or like boxes that individuals can put their belongings in. Others have set up like little cot areas. So each shelter site is different. I really can't, we'd have to ask all the individual shelter sites to answer that question, but most of those have tried to accommodate both the individual along with their belongings.
One final question, if I may. Can you review again, you referenced it, but I'm sorry I didn't internalize all the information you shared, but you referenced the temperature guideline. Yes. And I think there's both the 0 degree and the 10 below markers that were referenced. If you could restate that, and if there's anything you could add, that would be appreciated. Yeah,
this has been something that as we've designed the program for this year, it's sort of evolved. So the mandatory operation is -10 degrees Fahrenheit, including wind chill, but it has to be sustained for 4 hours within the night to be considered mandatory. And what we have asked the shelter site providers that have that are part of the program is that those are the nights where you will ensure that you have the staff and the capacity and the ability to operate should it activate. We've only had a couple of nights with a handful of locations that have operated under that so far this season. However, the community recognizes that -10 is still really cold and that people can freeze at a higher degree. So we, every month and really on an ongoing weekly basis, we assess both the budgetary ability as well as the capacity of the shelter locations to see if they are able to operate at an optional activation of 0 degrees Fahrenheit, including wind chill, again, sustained over a period of 4 hours. And so we will send out activations for those, and then it's up to the shelter sites to say, yes, we have the capacity, yes, we have the staffing, yes, we're able to mobilize people quickly enough to get the shelter site operational. We have other shelter sites that have their own internal policy about when they operate. I think Beth Ann can speak a little bit more to this because I know the Montpelier one does have a different policy and they operate on other nights that are higher than 0 degrees. But the state's program that we're administrating will only reimburse shelter sites for those that we initiate the activation either under the mandatory or the optional activation triggers.
Thank you, Melissa.
And I can provide what I shared. I'll give that to Lori
That'd be
written
great.
so that you all can refer back to it as well.
Thank you. Representative McGill.
Yeah, you mentioned that sometimes there can be staffing issues. If you all had more funding and some kind of relaxed guidance, do you think you could have the capacity to operate, I mean, not every night, but on more nights in those situations?
So again, I want to be really clear. VIA is not operating any shelter.
Yes, I mean, yes.
The shelter
when I say
site.
you, I mean the
shelter,
network of your network of shelter sites.
So I'm not necessarily certain that more funding would be the answer to that. I think part of it is that when we are looking at this as a seasonal employment, like if a shelter site decides to say we're going to hire people to be here, then it's seasonal employment that is not steady, right? Because it's only emergency. So you may work 2 nights for the season, you may work 20 nights for the season. There's no dependability. So finding people that can actually do that are outside of an organization that doesn't already exist is challenging to do. And so that's where some of the staffing, like staff take vacation. So one of our mandatory nights this season was Christmas Eve. And, people were on vacation and there's nothing you can do about that. The other side of things, though, is that for the shelter locations that rely on volunteers, some have a very robust volunteer base, like the Montpelier site, which Beth Ann can talk about. Others are just getting going this season, and so their volunteer list isn't as big. And so trying to find volunteers that could come in during, on the right nights just has been a challenge for them. So as the administrators, we're trying to provide the technical assistance to help those shelter sites build up those lists and look at what other options that they could employ in order to get the sites up and running.
I'd love if you could share with me more information about how folks could volunteer if they're interested, and the sites that are accepting them and contact lists. Just as a side note. And then, we all have pretty huge microphones as legislators, and I would be happy to help with that. We, are all aware that even just this winter, we've had Vermonters die on the streets. And I am wondering if you can just talk a bit about the human impact on both, that you hear on staff and volunteers at the sites, and also the people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We're asking folks to do all of these things, and also not really acknowledging the trauma, often a lifetime of trauma and harm, but really just the trauma and harm that is kind of happening on a daily basis. It just by, the very fact that being without a home. So yeah, just some of the human impact.
I am actually going to defer that question to my colleague Beth Ann Mayer,
Yeah.
just because she is on the front lines and probably could articulate it much better than I am able to. So if you don't mind asking her that question, I think she would be a better person to address that. I do know that from what we've heard, it is challenging. I only read the reports. So what I hear from the reports that are given is that people are tired, overworked. As the number of nights increase, people become more tired and more overworked, and it is challenging. And then, the folks that are coming in, we ask a lot of them, unfortunately, because of rules and regulations that you all, our federal colleagues, put on programs such as this. And what we have to remember is that these are human beings who are fighting for their lives on a day-to-day basis, minute to minute. And I don't think any of us really understand what it's like to do that. And so the way that we've designed the program and that what we're trying to do is make it so that there's the least amount of barrier while still being able to be accountable for the money and the work that we're doing, but to be able to provide the least barrier options for folks to be warm on some of our coldest nights in Vermont. And that's just something that we have to continue to work out, and every situation is different.
Thanks, Melissa. Representative Donahue.
Thanks. Yes. And thanks for the testimony. You mentioned that there are 6 operating under the program, under the state-funded program. Do you have an estimate of what the total number of beds with all those 6?
Yes, it's over 200. I can pull up actually the exact amount.
Well, yeah, don't do that now.
It's over 200. It's like 209, I believe, is if every shelter site was open and at full capacity, that
Right.
would be the total number of beds. It might be a little bit more than that, because I know that a couple of the shelter sites were able to secure a few more beds.
Great. So what would be great is, just as a follow-up, not now, but if we could get a list of what those 6 locations are and how many beds in each of those locations.
I'll put that at the bottom of the document that I sent to Lori.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. And if you were going to try to, maybe a rough estimate or maybe a question for someone else, but how many would be needed to meet that, temperature level and so forth? 200 plus, how much more would be needed so that there were enough for anyone who was requesting shelter?
Right. Yeah. So the total number of operating that could, potentially be operated is 217. I also wanted to point out that on the state's, on the DCF website that talks about the program, we do have the list of locations where the shelter site is, but I'll also provide that for you all. I actually do not have that estimate because, again, the grant of the program decided to focus on 6 regions, but we know that there are other regions that could also operate these, especially like in more rural areas, where, maybe folks are sleeping in cars or sleeping in tents and they just need to come in for a night or two when it's the coldest nights. We just didn't have the capacity because, again, we were building this program this year as we're going, and we wanted to ensure that we could do what we were being asked to do it well, and then hopefully be able to scale up some. But I don't have an estimate of the number that we would need. Even the ones that we got, some of them were touch and go. We were not sure if we were going to have a site in Bennington or Rutland, and we've needed both sites this season. So I don't have the answer to that question, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question, which you touched on a little bit, Melissa. So have you found it very challenging finding operators in the different locations of the state to operate the shelters?
It was a little challenging. We have some ideas for ways that we can reach out for the next season, should we have the funding to be able to provide the program again. I think that one of the things is we need to start a lot earlier, talking to folks and thinking through logistics. In central Vermont, and again, Beth Ann might touch on this, but the communities in Barre and Montpelier operated these shelters last year, on their own. And it started from just saying, hey, our neighbors have been kicked out of the hotel motel program. They have nowhere to go. We can't fathom having them sleep on the streets while we're nice and warm in our beds. So they were able to stand up shelters last winter, just through generosity in the community. So those two locations, it was rather easy to pull together, but then at the same time, there were some challenges. In other locations, it was pretty easy to get going, but I think each location has had some sort of challenge, whether it be fire safety, whether it be permitting, whether it be waiting for the local ordinances to say, hey, we can allow this shelter to operate at this location and have that public testimony time. Each site has had its challenges.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair is back.
Oh, good morning.
Hello,
Good morning,
Representative.
Melissa, and
Good morning.
good morning. I appreciate you being here, and I'm sorry that I had to be late down in another committee. You
I know.
you may have probably already covered this, but one of the questions that I particularly have, when the press was covering sort of the initiation of this, relatively new support for local communities that's happening through VIA. I remember the news report and people saying, well, minus 10 degrees is pretty cold. And I remember the person who was being interviewed saying, well, it was, well, we don't really know how it's going to go. We need to stay within the money that we have. And, so I guess trying to figure out how to frame this as a question. Department has notified us that they have $5.5 million at least money that is going to be underspent in an area for emergency housing. And had they approached VIA about maybe modifying the grant agreement and looking at any different parameters around? There's still a lot of winter left, I guess is what I'm saying. And around loosening up that and I don't know the what you call it, the temperature thing, and I don't know honestly if the local groups that you're working with would be able to accommodate it or not, but
yeah. So from the time that initial article was released, I unfortunately was out of town with a family matter, so I wasn't able to handle any sort of press. And I think that if I had been speaking, it might have gone a little bit differently, because from the start, and I explained this earlier, but I would love to explain it again to you. We had set a mandatory trigger of -10 was given to us, including wind chill for 4 hours or more. But we, as administrators, our staff really pushed back, and we had lots of conversations. We did talked to a lot of different people, did our usual thing that we do at Vermont Interfaith Action, and just did our research. And we were able to settle that sites can have an opt-in at 0 degrees. It's still, 0 is still really cold. I mean, I don't think it's quite 0 yet, and I've been outside most of the morning, and it's pretty cold out there. And we did that because we recognize that, like, they need to open earlier. I don't think it's just a matter of money. It's also capacity of these site locations. And so part of it may be, part of what we have put into this program, and as we've been designing this, is the ability to have a time of reflection and a time of evaluation, both every night. So, like, after a night happens, our staff get on a Zoom call, or at least touch base with every shelter site that has operated, to do some reflection, to take it in right then in the moment, so that we're not trying to look back and say, remember all of the things that we wish we had maybe done differently, or the things that went really well that we wanted to replicate again. And we're also going to take time at the end of the season to do that as site providers, to be able to think through what things could we change or do differently in the future to operate better. In some locations, we might need to think about, well, is there a different way that we can be doing it? Because the need is there, but figuring out all the nuts and bolts sometimes takes a little bit of trial and error. So I don't think some of the sites that could have optional operations, they're declining to do it because they don't have the capacity, whether that be staffing, location, whatever.
And I just want to clarify, and then I'll go to Representative Donahue. When you said opt-in, I'm not sure I understand what that means. They do it on their own dime, or would the state pay for it if they opted to do it earlier?
As long as an approved shelter location who we have an agreement with gets an activation email of saying, we have looked at all the data, tonight in your location, it will be 0 degrees or below, including wind chill, for a sustained period of time of 4 hours or more. So you have the authority to operate as an extreme cold weather shelter center tonight, should you choose to do that. If it's -10 or below, it's a mandatory, and so they should be operating unless there's some unforeseen. I think one of the locations had a toilet start leaking, and so they weren't able to open up that night because they had nowhere to put people that night with a mandatory operation. So, unless there's some unforeseeable emergency that happens where they're not able to open the shelter because it would be unsafe, they are expected to open the shelter when it reaches -10 or below, because that's what they signed up for. But the 0 degrees and below, that they have that optional operating. It's up to them, and if they choose to operate, the state will reimburse. If they choose not to operate, then they don't operate that night.
Okay, thank you. Representative Donahue.
Yeah, thank you. As a bit of a follow-up, because we were talking about, location and so forth. And I think you referenced that DCF has it on their website with the actual breakdown. So I did a little dual tasking, and I looked up on the DCF website, and I'm not the most computer literate person. I could not find anything on it telling me where to find a cold weather emergency shelter. The only connection to cold weather shelter was a connection to what the rules are, not location. So I went to 211, and obviously you can call that number if you're aware of it. But I just went to the website, and they did have 2 links that seemed logical. The closest 2 were extreme cold warming shelters or centers, extreme cold warning centers, and overnight shelters. And on both of those links, when you click them, they said no information available. So
There's an information desert right there.
we do have an information gap. Yeah.
So on the DCF website, it is a little bit confusing. It's hard to find. If you go to the OEO menu under programs, at the bottom of that list is Extreme Cold Weather Shelter Program. And it will show you the guidance document, the email for us. So Representative McGill, to your point of like, where can people, if they want to volunteer and they don't know who to contact in their local community, they could email that email address and we can connect them. And then it has the list of providers. So we have Bennington County, Chittenden, Northeast Kingdom, and Newport, Rutland County, Washington County, and Windham County are the 6 areas. And then it lists out who the providers are in those areas.
Yeah, so I just think for our committee to think about, I mean, if I were on the street, there was be no way I could access that. But if I had a friend and I couldn't take them in and I knew they were desperate or someone I knew, I would not be able to find that information. And it seems to me it should be right on the homepage, not you have to know it would be under OEO, et cetera, et cetera. So just more comment for our committee than for our witness. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions for Melissa? Well, I want to, I've seen the impact of VIA stepping up and working with the communities, and was going by a local spot here in Montpelier last night and saw people lined up waiting to get in. And I really, really appreciate the fact that, you all have been working so hard to make this happen for our unhoused neighbors out there, with not a huge amount of notice and an amount of work that I know trying to do these things on a shoestring with volunteers out there, and like you said, capacity issues, and I've been copied on some Division of Fire Safety emails, and all of those kinds of things, which you probably mentioned. That I think that I just want to say thank you for what VIA has done to help people.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to.
Great. Okay, Dr. Mayer, Beth Ann, welcome to the table.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do I have to speak up or anything?
No, the microphones are very sensitive, so.
So I'm Beth Ann Mayer. I'm retired pediatrician and used to live across the street from the system. Give me as Dr. Mayer. This is our 3rd year in Montpelier of operating an emergency cold weather shelter. We started, meaning a collaboration of congregations of faith in Montpelier, started the year before last, and during which there were only 14 nights that met our trigger, which is the weather needs to be below 10 degrees. And that is continued to be our trigger for more than a few hours. And that includes wind chill. So the first year there were 14 nights. Last year there were 45 nights that met that trigger, which took us by surprise. We do have a fairly robust list of volunteers. All of the people that take shifts during the night are volunteers. They take a 4-hour shift. The hardest to fill is midnight to 4. 4 to 8 is not easy to fill. I just worked that this morning. But I'm an early riser, so it doesn't have that huge an impact on my life. Also in our area, we've previously had a seasonal overnight shelter during the winter. So last winter, on those 45 nights, we were often full at 15, and our seasonal overnight shelter was full at 25. So we were sheltering 40 people. We went into this winter with no seasonal overnight shelter. And so we were scrambling to try to increase the amount of shelter in Montpelier and in Central Vermont in general. So up until the beginning of this week, the emergency cold weather shelter was the only seasonal overnight shelter. And we operated 18 nights through December. And I believe 8 of them were activated. 2 of them were total activation and 6 of them were optional activations. So we will get reimbursed for 8 nights. We've operated for 18 in December, and January's already had a few. Last night's activation rate, a true activation rate. So our shelter was full at 15 many nights through December. And people had nowhere else to go, which was scary. We had a woman in her second trimester of pregnancy. We had 2 gentlemen with colostomy bags. We have a gentleman who got severe frostbite of his hands. And it's been 2 weeks now. We've been bandaging him daily. It's slowly healing. He has deep second-degree burns on a good bit of his hands. There is just a lot of people trying to survive out there with a lot of problems. I have to say that the biggest problem that we deal with is alcoholism. There is very little, we are like the last haven for people who are having difficulty with alcoholism. So many of the people that we see in our shelter have not been able to maintain time in the hotels because of their alcoholism. They aren't able to be in permanent shelters because of their alcoholism, and there's no place else for them to be. And we feel like we are just keeping them alive until that magic moment when they can reach their sobriety. But it's very difficult. And this is being done with community volunteers with big hearts, and we do training and Melissa did not mention the training that is available through this program. Very good online videos that our volunteers are taking advantage of. So this week, we finally got open a nightly shelter that's being supervised by our local community action agency. And it's such a relief that, but I have to put in this plug for GA hotel vouchers. So organizing this nightly shelter in Montpelier for 15 individuals, it will allow daytime warming space. There will be 2 hours of the day when there is no daytime warming space, but otherwise they're covered for 24 hours. They're moving through 3 churches in order to do this, to make this happen on their daily basis. And they have to keep track of that. In order to staff that and set it up, it costs twice as much as a hotel room for those 15 people during this season. And they have no base. They carry everything, but somebody asked about personal belongings. They're dragging their bags with them because nobody has the ability to keep their personal belongings in our spaces.
So can I just ask you to repeat that, Beth Ann? So they're moving between 3 different churches, in order to, be able to have warm space. And I didn't understand the correlation between the cost. So if we had 15 people at $80 a night, are you saying that doing those three churches, the cost for doing that is exceeding what 15 people times $80 a night would be?
Twice as much,
Twice as much.
twice as much, and it's mostly staff.
And is that something that is being paid for by the state?
It is, it was, we were able to get funding through OEO. I believe it's HOP.
Hot program, yeah, it would be hot.
Because, they said they could do it if they could add it on to somebody's currently existing HOP grant.
Right,
So we had our choice of Capstone and Good Samaritan Haven, and
Yeah.
Good Samaritan Haven was maxed out, so Capstone and Haven could do it.
uh-huh. And so the state's paying twice as much as they would if they were housing those folks. But I did hear you say that those are likely folks who local hotels might not take.
Yes, they had, many had, I'll tell you this, that last year, the population of people that we were dealing with every night are now mostly stable in hotels. Because of the outreach program that Good Samaritan Haven has been doing. They have been, and Homelessness Vermont, getting them into hotels. And continuing some support. They don't get, they don't have anything near wraparound services, but a woman who was, I know many of these individuals who are heavily involved in substances last winter. I mean, I would be too if I were living like that. It is just so difficult to live that way. So they are sober this winter and they're staying in their hotel rooms and they're not getting kicked out. And so it's not everybody, but there's definitely a progression of hope there.
Given half a chance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Representative Steady.
because I used to house the homeless at the state, and I house with alcoholism. Is it because they're not behaving, they get kicked out? They can get housed.
Yes,
with
they aren't
alcoholism.
excluded because of
They're
alcohol.
only being excluded when they don't behave.
It's being.
I just wanted to make that clear because people are gonna think, oh my God, we aren't gonna put somebody in, I mean, I
On the
had
other
4
hand-
alcoholics.
On the other hand, I can think of 3 off the top of my head. Veterans that we are sheltering in the emergency cold weather shelter and in now the nightly shelter who are seriously involved with alcoholism, and they have not been able to be at the veterans shelter because of
Behavior, not about.
because they have a sobriety policy.
Oh, okay, but hotel,
The hotels,
okay,
no,
because
yeah,
I don't want people to think we're discriminating.
No,
against somebody
it's
because they're an alcoholic.
behavior
I mean, it's an addiction.
that is
It's not.
being caused by their alcoholism. that
Oh,
is
okay,
keeping them from continuing.
the
to be-
behavior. Okay, I just wanted that clear. I don't want people to think we're discriminating against somebody because they drink alcohol.
So, one of the things that is sort of contemplated by Representative McGuire's bill on, the new H 594 is looking at some really kind of specialty services and supports, and including specialty shelter kinds of supports. And I'm just curious what your take would be on, particularly, individuals who have a substance use issue with alcohol or other substances. Right now I've heard from shelters who have testified and said, we're not really equipped for not everybody, because some feel like they can take on that challenge. But a number of them say we're not really equipped, and it would be better if somebody who, an organization or department that has training in, co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders, for instance, were actually, running a shelter for individuals who maybe are challenged with those issues. And I'm just curious about, you've had a lot of experience in this, and I'm just curious if you think that that would be an advisable approach to pursue or not.
I think there's a real need for low barrier shelters that can work. I think single room occupancy, people cannot coexist for a long period of time while they're fighting their own demons. And so they need their own space. And we just don't have single room occupancy much of anywhere. But a facility that offered that with services in the building,
Mhm.
you know, that were tailored to the need of the individuals there, I think could be very effective.
Mhm. Mhm. You know, we've struggled in this committee, I think, to feel like we're having any progress getting some of the other departments in the Agency of Human Services engaged with this group of individuals. And you know, we heard yesterday from the secretary that, you know, as their executive team and all the commissioners of these various departments now are tackling, you know, essentially all the issues of the Agency of Human Services. And so thank you for that feedback. You know, as we look to try to make some progress in this area this year, you know, how we make decisions about where we utilize funding and for what purposes will be important. And I doubt that we will have the opportunity to increase any funding in this area. We'll be trying to hold on to what it is currently that's being allocated to this area. And I know the Department of Mental Health has its own struggles, but it does feel like that there would be some value to having you know, folks with the mental health training and the backup of a designated agency in the Department of Mental Health to be able to step into this space. And they have the ability to help people transition as their lives improve. So thank you for.
I think one other segment that could benefit from some tailored housing. A number of the individuals that we're seeing on a daily basis have lived their lives somewhere with neurodevelopmental differences, and are mostly struggling with interpersonal communication. And that keeps them from being employed. It keeps them from coexisting in relationships that would support them and all kinds of things. But they are not substance involved. And yet they're trying to exist in this congregate population that is moving around from space to space. The library, we have Another Way, which is an alternative mental health home, you know, day space. And they're really struggling to coexist with some very challenging people. And they can take care of themselves. They're not so needy that they're going to fall under the.
They're not going to qualify for developmental disability services. Yeah. They're kind of in that in between space of qualifying for support and not. Although, you know, the state Supreme Court required the department to change that definition somewhat a couple of years back. And so the sort of the IQ limitations are a bit broader than they used to be. And I don't know, you know, to what extent. Again, that comes down to case management and you know, people understanding the systems and being able to do that. And it doesn't always feel right, even though I, you know, vastly appreciate the role of volunteers in this, to put all of that on volunteers who are really just trying to make sure that people can get fed and, you know, changing the bandages on somebody who's got severe burns or helping somebody with their colostomy bag or their ostomy services. You know, I'm amazed at the depth of the heart and soul of people. And amazed in the negative sense at the failure of our system. Yeah, go ahead, Representative Bishop, and then Representative Cole.
This doesn't get to the point that the chair just made about what we're asking people to do for supports in these shelters, but can you tell me, it sounds like there may be a mix of volunteer and paid. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And if you do know how that plays out in the other 5 partner cold weather shelters, who they're relying upon, that would be helpful.
I don't know a lot about the other shelters, so I can't really answer how they're structured. This year, for the first year, we are giving a stipend to a coordinator. And she's responsible for recruiting volunteers and assigning them shifts, trying to encourage them to engage with training. And she's the one who communicates with the community. We do call the fire department and the police department every night we're open. We call the various shelters in another way, and people who are going to see people who might need shelter that night. We also have a website, which is www.montpeliercold.org. So it's easy for people to remember, and we post every day whether we're open or not. So it's pretty accessible for people to find out if we're going to be open. And the hospital case manager, somebody, you know, the emergency room case manager, or whatever she's called, she knows about our website. The emergency room can just look and see if we're open. So we do have that communication. But she's our stipended coordinator, is in our budget for the grant, but we only get paid for 8 nights out of 18 so far in December, so.
Yeah, go ahead,
8
Representative.
nights for 15 people. So we've operated 18 nights through December. We've had some more in January, but in thinking of the billing cycle, which I've just done the report on.
Yeah.
We have operated for 18 nights, and 8 of those we will get paid for out of the grant.
8 of them.
Yeah,
Oh, it's $1,200 a day. You have 15 people?
we have 15 people.
So
Every
by
grant,
$80?
no.
No, what's the $80?
The $80 is what pays for a hotel.
Hotel, that's hotels.
Oh, that's
If
hotel.
they were in-
I've gotten confused on this. So-
Each site has its own budget of
Okay,
what they asked for.
okay.
So we asked to pay our coordinator $40 an hour. And we get paid that on activated nights. But she's doing it for all the
More
other
than
nights too, so she's not working for $40 an hour for us.
Right.
She's working for the state for $40, and she's worth it, let me tell you, she's worth
Oh, I'm not saying
And then-
that. I'm just wondering, I've gotten confused,
it.
so.
Yeah,
So the
and then we
stipend
do also stipend an operations manager.
at $40 an hour?
No,
No.
it's less than that, but that actually cares for, figures out if we have the right supplies, if the facility is having any problems, doing the laundry. So things that are like.
So, Tatiana, I just want to make sure that everybody's clear. So based upon your, the group of faith organizations that have come together in Montpelier to provide services, you said, okay, we'll be open anytime it's 10 degrees above. But the state grant that is paying And so far in December, you were 18 of those nights qualified. And then the state says, but we're only going to pay for those that are at either -10 or 0.
Okay.
So 8 of them qualified. So, through the generosity of volunteers, the other 10 nights are being covered, but the state is not paying for them.
So that's, when I did it,
So I
it
just
was
wanted to be clear.
32 degrees or less. So that's changed.
Now it's
Now it's way down to 10.
0. No, no, it's down to 0.
0.
Oh, okay. But is it still 32 degrees or less?
No, it's 0.
0 degrees or.
Wow.
Yeah.
Opts to open up at 10.
How about hotels? Is it freezing?
It's winter weather provisions are just date-based. So,
December 1 to April 1.
yeah, December to
Okay,
March
so yours is
31st.
like- Okay, but the state is still 32 degrees.
No.
No,
The state is
that
0.
changed. Oh, it used to be
For an
32
emergency
degrees
shelter,
and
it's
less.
0. For the motel, it's by date. It's no longer managed by the temperature as.
Oh, I want it like it was.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Representative Cole. we missed-
okay.
So now it's just
And back up.
0 degrees?
It's at 0 degrees.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
And it's at 0 degrees optionally, depending upon the staffing and the situation, according to what Melissa was saying earlier. But they're required to open at -10. Representative Cole.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Beth Ann. This is really, really powerful testimony. As always, I love seeing your face in here whenever you walk in. It is so insightful, just candidly speaking. So obviously we just started this week. We had the bill introduction from Rep. McGuire about, 594. So really, I'm going to value your insight on this very specific language, and I don't, on the spot, not asking at all for you to, sound in, but a couple of things that I think just to pay attention to as we move throughout the session on this particular bill, I would love, there are very specific rules in this bill regarding participation and, program participation, because now we're hoping it'll be a real program. That's one of the end goals. But in particular, on page 17 and 18, we talk about time limits, we talk about other rules. And so as someone who lives and breathes beyond time limits of program participation, I think your insight on these particular pages will be very, very helpful. I think I'll leave it at that, but those very particular criteria where, they're tangible numbers on something that is very an individualized circumstance, trying to bridge the gap between those two. So I really appreciate your insight,
I haven't read the bill,
Yeah, I'm totally fine.
but I'll
Totally
definitely
fine.
be taking a close look at it.
Thank you.
And, I mean, we know that the time limit of 80 days that has been existing, for, GA housing outside of the winter season
Mhm.
just bears no reality to anything. I mean, at some time, maybe 20 years ago, that was how long it took for people to get housed when they became unhoused, but it's just nowhere near reality. It's closer to 2 years. So I will look at that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Any other questions for the witness? Thank you so much for coming in, Beth Ann.
Thank you for
Ada.
all your work on this.
Thanks.
It's, we have to do something.
Yeah. Agreed.
Hard copy, that's an extra hard copy.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
Thank you. You know, and I think last year when I testified and mentioned the emergency call punishment, Representative McGuire gave me his card and said, call me if you need somebody to volunteer.
Nice.
Representative McGuire was sorry he wasn't able to be here for your testimony this afternoon or this morning, but he had to leave a little bit early today. So he wanted me to extend his apologies. Okay, folks. hold on one second. Please stand by, exactly. Because I need to see what it is we're doing this afternoon. Okay. We are going to postpone our vote on H 545 until Tuesday, because we're hearing from the Judiciary Committee this afternoon. To be honest, I haven't spoken with the chair about, they were taking testimony this morning on the bill. So I'm not really sure, other than they had some questions about the immunity clause, which is what they're focused on down there. We will hear from Representative Lalonde about that after lunch. And so there may be changes that they're recommending. The Healthcare Committee did not recommend any changes. They were good with what we did. That's why I'm postponing it. And Representative McGuire wanted to be able to vote on it, and he needed to be absent this afternoon. So we will vote on that on Tuesday. I know it's like, this sort of never ending, changing the date. Yes, sir.
I'd like to vote on it Tuesday also, but I have a dentist appointment in Middlebury.
Okay.
And to me, it was.
Okay, so it will be the afternoon on Tuesday.
I'll definitely be here.
Okay, yeah, because we have caucuses and the House floor on Tuesday morning, so it'll be the afternoon.
I just texted you about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate
I
that.
was wondering if I missed it, so.
No, I told you I would text you if we
I
were
was
voting on it.
watching,
Yeah.
I was watching.
And Ann will be back sitting to my right here on Tuesday, so we should have a full complement of people, so that'll be good. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know what was going on with regard to that. And I know I sent it on email, but I just wanted to extend the Appropriations Committee appreciation. They were very appreciative of the work that our committee had done on the budget adjustment. We uncovered some issues, and they're going to take further testimony from the administration on some of the issues that we have uncovered. So that is good. They have some questions about the designated agency systems reform language. That came in relatively late to our process, so we did not have a chance to take testimony from the department about that. We only got that from the designated agencies. So that's, just letting you know where things are at. Appropriations Committee expects to vote out the budget adjustment by next Friday. So they'll be meeting with the administration, making adjustments, and we'll see that on the floor the following week. So not next week, but the following week. And I expect, because they usually do have a caucus of the whole opportunity for people to ask any questions once they have voted it out of committee. So you can probably look for that to happen maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday of the following week. So we're going to hear from Representative Lalonde, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time, obviously discussing any potential changes that Representative Lalonde may bring, but also spending a little bit of time on H 594 this afternoon to just get the general sense after we've had the overview of the things that are things that resonate with you, things that you say, I need more information, or this would be really difficult for me to support. This is just going to be open conversation. Okay. I want to be open about there are meetings that are happening outside of the room about this bill, both with the administration wanted to meet about it, and Eric and I met with several members of the administration about the bill, and we also met with members of the advocacy community as well. So just hearing feedback. We're taking in feedback as part of the process, and we'll be hearing from witnesses along the way. And as I mentioned, as we got an example of yesterday, we heard from witnesses that we don't ordinarily hear from, who are being impacted by the issue of homelessness in our state. We're going to have more of that. We're going to hear from libraries, if you can believe that. You know, I think you heard Beth Ann mention libraries, you know, people, they're serving as a often a soft landing space for people when it's very cold out, or very hot, I will tell you, if it's an air-conditioned library. I know that's happened in my community. So we're going to be hearing from people we haven't ordinarily heard from. We are also going to, next week, start our budget presentations from the Agency of Human Services. So I'm going to be working with Lori on how we line that up. And obviously, we'll hear from the Secretary of Human Services first to have her outline that. Yes.
Can I just share a thought about the budget? Following up on yesterday's testimony from Secretary. I find interesting, and probably it's helpful for them, the way that they are talking about things in a more combined way, or looking at things. I'm wondering how that will play out in budget presentations, you know, two combined.
We were going to see all of them, but I don't know if we are or not. That's going to be a scheduling nightmare for Lori, I think, but.
Well, if it's two combined in the way they give the presentation, it seems like we won't get to the depth of.
To the
what they
depth.
understand. So we'll see how it plays out.
So related to that, yesterday, the speaker organized a chair and vice chair meeting with the Appropriations Committee. And so all of us met, and Chair Shy and Vice Chair Feltus talked to us about what they are hoping our policy committees dig into with regard to our work with the budget and our testimony from the administration. So they, I might have it in my inbox. I don't know. I haven't checked inbox yet today. But they are sending along, which I will share when I get it, suggested topics and questions that they would like us to look at as we develop our recommendations. And as Chair Shy pointed out, our committee is always the most complicated committee because one, we have one of the largest parts of state government, and two, we got a lot of moving parts in this committee, as you know, in your individual budget areas. So we will, I'll hand that out, and I'll also move it up in your inbox, but back in October, Representative Harrison, Representative I sent an email to, bless you, an email to all state departments, giving them a heads up that we are going to be looking at not just the ups and downs, which is what they've normally done, that we're going to be looking in much more detail at the programs, the services, wanting to evaluate how are you evaluating whether or not these are the services that we should be spending the money on, et cetera. So we had done a bit of that in our committee, probably more than other committees had done. So it's, you know, it'll be a little bit more intense for us, but it'll be, you know, along the lines that I had said earlier this week. So I think that, you know, our committee is well poised to take on that challenge. We can do it. We just did it with BAA. As I said, they were appreciative and impressed with the level of information that we were able to glean out of in a short period of time. So we'll have more time on the budget, but it's a bigger task as well. So it's going to require some, you'll see open times in our agenda for you to be able to meet with people, both within the administration and with community partners and advocates to hear their stories. And remember, I'm going to be relying on you to bring forth your recommendations for who we will hear from directly for the full committee. So we're going to be doing some scheduling magic, right, Lori? Thank you all, and we'll see you back here at 1. Thank you, Lori. We're done.
What?
Oh.